everybody, to another edition of the Panel B podcast. Season 3 going strong. This is like, we've already exceeded how long Season 2 was. Season 3 is going strong. Looks like it's never going to end. Who knows when it's going to end, but Season 3 already looking like our strongest season of all time.
What I was just chuckling at is that I now realize that you, as the, I guess, de facto host that starts off every show, you start off every show by going like this.
Yeah, you like that? I'm pointing at the audience. Like, I'm making sure they know that they're watching Panel B, so I'm pointing at them.
I kind of don't like it, but it's your thing, and you can stick to it.
What would you do if you introduced? All right,
it's a podcast. We're an audio show that happens to be on video. So
intro the show. 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of Panel B. We're going to talk Super Bowl, MLB, Mookie Betts trade, Clint Capella trade in the NBA, and a little bit of basketball for tonight, Wednesday night.
That sounds like every other podcast on the market, so thank you for being unoriginal.
Well,
when I point,
it doesn't
know
sound
it's
like anything when you go like this and fire off the double pistol fingers, but let's go.
It's a shout-out to our video viewers. Thank you very much for watching. A very somber mood in Boston with, as you mentioned, the Mookie Betts trade. We'll get to that later on in the show. Talk a little bit of NBA, some trades going down already. The trade deadline's coming Friday? Is it
Thursday
Friday?
afternoon.
Thursday. So some moves already being made, so we'll get into that a little bit first, but, of course, we just had the big game on Sunday, the Super Bowl. We talked about that extensively last week. I think we did pretty good. We were pretty good on our analysis. We'll talk about some of the prop bets and whatnot. But the Chiefs coming away with the victory. I think a lot of us expected that. The line showed that. The spread showed that. Thoughts?
So my overall thoughts on the game, eliminating the gambling perspective for a second, was just Shanahan blowing it again, getting the chance to see Jimmy Garoppolo. Is Garoppolo going to have to open it up in this game? He did at the end. He was awful. A 2.8 quarterback rating, I think it was, in the fourth quarter.
Awful. Jesus.
Missed the big throw to Sanders, the chance to make it all not matter, I guess.
Yep.
So, yeah, my thoughts are that Shanahan has no idea how to keep a lead. He messes it up every time on the biggest stage. The other thing is, like, thinking about it as the comeback, like, obviously the Patriots went over the Falcons was just more improbable because it was just so much more needed to happen. But at the same time, this was 20-10 with like just over 6 minutes left. The Chiefs didn't win the fourth quarter 21-0. They won the last 6 minutes and like 14 seconds 21-0.
Right.
That's awful.
Yep.
That is so bad. The 49ers did absolutely everything wrong in the last 6.5, 7 minutes of the game and did not deserve to win. And as for Mahomes, all 3 playoff wins, double-digit comeback victories.
Amazing.
That's insane. What a weapon he is to just keep you even more than, better than Brady in his prime, better than what Lamar Jackson, the MVP, can do for you right now. I don't think there's anybody like Mahomes that can throw you back into a game that quickly.
Right. And my sentiment was that, and I was kind of on this boat to begin with, was that the 49ers might be able to stop the Chiefs defensively.
And they did for
most of the game.
54 minutes.
But in the end, the Chiefs have too much offensively for them to stop them for a victory. And that's kind of what it came down to. Damian Williams coming up clutch in the end, the receiving touchdown, the rushing touchdown, 104 rushing yards on 17 attempts. We haven't seen a game like that from him almost all season. I think he only went over 100 yards once during the regular season, but when it mattered, Damian Williams was so clutch for them, not just in this game, for the entire playoffs.
Yep.
He was that key factor. Not Travis Kelce, not Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had a very good game, but Damian Williams was that piece to kind of push them over the edge, especially in this game here, because that rushing touchdown was a thing of beauty. That was a thing of beauty, and that put the final nail in the coffin for the 49ers.
A lot of people feel like they got snubbed on their Damian Williams 12-1, 14-1 MVP tickets.
I agree. I think
it should have gone there. It reminded me a little bit of, and going back to the Patriots-Falcons game, I guess Kyle Shanahan ends up on the wrong ends of all these, when Brady won the MVP, not James White.
Yep.
And Brady, even after the game, was like, well, I'm going to give the car to James White because he was the MVP. And it's just like, sometimes it just goes to that all-time quarterback.
Lazy.
It is, yeah, it really is.
Because on the DraftKings Sportsbook, for the quarterback position to win the MVP, it was minus 230. It was the big, heavy favorite. Running back was plus 500. So if you had that and you saw that second touchdown from Damian Williams, How do you not think that he's not the MVP? I mean, sure.
It came down to the first score of the game almost, I feel like, too. Because Mahomes got the rushing touchdown, and it was almost Darwin Thompson for the game's first touchdown out of nowhere. That would have been ridiculous.
Oh, my goodness.
That would have been ridiculous for obviously a very popular bet, first touchdown in the game. But Williams got stuffed on that first one. And Mahomes, when he ran it in, that was an option. He easily could have pitched it. I just feel like that was
He was trying to pitch it, actually.
Right. I feel like that was the swing touchdown for the MVP.
And it's just... you look at his line, too. 26 of 42, 286 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, which is very unlike him.
It was really for leading the comeback
of
more
course.
Than any number that Mahomes actually wanted, I guess.
And that's where I get aggravated with kind of the lazy pick of MVP. Yes, Mahomes was the one to lead for that comeback, but it was really Damian Williams who got the scores, who was able to do that. Like I said, 17 carries, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's not your MVP?
Right.
Come on. And the other funny thing was, if the 49ers had somehow held on and win, who would have won that? Juszczyk, I would think. A running back.
I think Jimmy G would have won it.
You think?
I can't tell you because it depends how they hang on and win. Do they hang on and win by hitting Sanders for that bomb, or do they hang on and win by the defense intercepting Mahomes for a third time? It totally depends how they hang on to win, I guess.
I guess we'll say through the first half of that game, it looked like it could have been Juszczyk.
I think if halftime was the game, I think it would have been Jimmy G, but I don't know. I guess it could have been. He had what? I don't know. Anyway, okay. I want to talk about one prop bet, and then we can get into our own bets, I guess. Because that'll tie into Juszczyk. It'll tie into some scoring.
Okay.
So the Mahomes rushing prop that let's just use.
Unbelievable.
Most books it opened around 29.5.
Yep.
Got bet up to, I think the consensus was around 34.5. Some places as high as 36.5. Mahomes rushes 6 times for 44 yards. Loses the 15 on his last 3 kneel downs. Wild kneel downs, like running backwards on the kneel downs.
Like taunting them.
And closes with 9 carries for 29 yards to hit the under. One of the all-time bad beats of the entire NFL season.
Unbelievable.
And this was the most popular prop bet to take. So horrible beat there. Unbelievable. And then this ties into our own bets because the ones that I don't know if I mentioned, I think I mentioned it on panel B, but I had everything on Twitter, that my Mahomes rushing bet would be Mahomes long carry over 11.5 yards.
Okay.
Which hit in there.
Okay.
And then everybody that had the full rushing prop got it by, 10, 8, whatever, 12 yards and lost it. I just thought that was ridiculous and gives reason in the future to look at potentially betting long rush over full game with quarterbacks who get those kneel downs.
Well, what's so aggravating is, especially with those, that they can lose some yards. Mm-hmm. So at least if you get like 5 extra, you got some wiggle room there. He lost 15. Mm-hmm. 15 on the final series. Like, that is just so... I am so glad that I did not take that because I missed the boat early. Once it got past, I think, like 31, I'm like, all right, I'm out. I've missed the boat here.
Having it at 29.5 must feel the worst.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he finished with 29.
Because you look at what he's done during the playoffs. He had over 50 yards in both playoff games. So the line felt fair. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the rest of his season, he was not consistently going over 50. So once it got at like 31.5.
Well, the only argument to be made against that is that they tend to... in the regular season, you want to protect your quarterback more. Sure. In the postseason, you take those risks and say, okay, run it.
Yep. For me, I was not comfortable taking over 31.5. I thought that was too high. But that was one bet I was so happy that I missed out on. Because I could not, as it was happening, I was watching and I was thinking of all those people who had that. And I said, I cannot believe what's taking place right now. What an unbelievable beat. In a Super Bowl that I think for the most part kind of went to how we all thought. Yes, we weren't expecting the Chiefs to coming from behind, but in the end...
Well, we almost were. We were expecting the 49ers to do better early, I think, and we were expecting a Chiefs comeback. It just happened a little more... It was a faster comeback later in the game than we anticipated, probably.
One prop I did want to bring up as a bad beat too, because it was there to happen, was over 2.5 players to throw a pass in the game.
Devo
said he
and then runs with
had it. He had it. It was up. He was ready to go, and he did it. Whoop. He took it back, and he rushed it.
Which was probably the smart play, too.
Yes, I agree. But it was there. Mm-hmm. We saw it coming to fruition, and then it did not happen. That was tough. I had that. I had the over 2.5. I loved it. I saw the snap go to him. I said, here it comes. And then he tucked it, and he ran. And it was that. It's not as bad as the Mahomes loss, but man, was that infuriating because the play was drawn up for it to happen, and it didn't.
All right, so looking at our own plays, which you just alluded to there, one of your losses, the plays I put out on Twitter went 8 and 11, but that includes like $10 bets to win $1,000 on D Ford MVP.
Right.
So they went 8 and 11 overall. They won. They went plus 1.64 units. The only thing that I played in game was the second half over 27, which hit on the Williams late rushing touchdown. I thought I wasn't going to get it, and I was like, oh, I got a good beat for once.
Yep.
What I'm mad about is that, as I said on the show, one of my big plays was going to be San Francisco first quarter. They didn't get the kickoff like I thought. They didn't win the first quarter like I thought. They were up 3-0 in the first quarter, and that Mahomes touchdown was, if they didn't score on that play, the clock would have run. They would have scored that touchdown as the first play of the second quarter, and Niners' first quarter would have hit. That one was a little rough. I did do an equally as large play on San Francisco to score first, which hit, so they just offset. Not a huge deal. Would have been nice to go 2-0 with those, though. My only regret now is that I said about that bet, then I want to start looking at Kansas City live.
Yep.
And during that 20-10 San Francisco lead, I never did anything on a Kansas City plus 300 or Kansas City plus 6.5. Like I never got involved in any of that, and it so easily just came back the Chiefs' way, like we kind of all thought it was going to. So there's one of my, I guess, regrets that I didn't act on. Although I got fortunate on the second half over.
So I don't really post a lot of my plays. That's kind of your shtick.
It's my shtick. Your shtick is pointing your fingers at the camera to start podcast. Mine is making our followers money on Twitter.
So maybe I should start posting them because I did very well with my props.
Congratulations on your wealth.
Thank you. I had salmon last night. But the biggest thing for me, and I told you this, the Damian Williams receiving touchdown was a massive swing for me because that hit on Patrick Mahomes over 2 touchdowns in a quarter, which I was starting to sweat. I was surprised that I was sweating that. Damian Williams anytime touchdown.
Yep.
And then I also had him paired with Kelsey to score and a separate one, him and Mostert to score. So we hit on a lot in that one play. So that was pretty big for me here too. One of the ones I did lose on, I had Juszczyk under 10.5 receiving yards. All of a sudden, he's a pivotal part of their offense, and he's just going crazy. So almost 2 touchdowns.
I also lost the Juszczyk one. Obviously, you just lose it on the first play because he gets a 14 or 15-yard touchdown. So I lost that one. But as soon as I lost that one, I put my money where my mouth is. I've been hyping up the Demarcus Robinson, this was a DK Sportsbook one, Demarcus Robinson to have more receiving yards than Kyle Juszczyk. A Kansas City wide receiver with Patrick Mahomes to have more receiving yards than the opposing fullback. And I lost that bet. That was my least favorite loss of the Super Bowl. It's just dumb. It's stupid. It stinks. Mecole Hardman only had 1 catch, too. I was like, Kansas City's got to get some of these other guys involved. Sammy Watkins wound up being the second fiddle, which he should be, but there should be room for a third guy in there, and there just kind of wasn't. Also, given that beat of, the tides turning so rapidly, it looked like Jimmy G under 29.5 passing attempts was going to hit, wound up with 31 because they had to sling it every play late. That was a loss for me. But we did win on, these are ones we discussed, Garoppolo completion percentage over 64.5. That hit. Easy. Despite how bad Jimmy G was late, higher completion percentage than Mahomes at even odds. That one hit. Going on the flip side, Mahomes to have a longer completion than Jimmy G. You had to lay the minus 150 on that. That one hit. I went bold on Mahomes under 313 passing yards. Ooh. Everybody liked the over there. That one hit. And finally, I got this one kind of early before it was taken down because we didn't know Tevin Coleman's status. Tevin Coleman under 9.5 carries. Per usual, they start him, give him all this work. He gets 5 carries. We never hear from him again. That one hit. So those ones worked out. It was more the long shots that didn't do as well for me, and I regret not betting Kansas City live.
My only regret that I did not take was the over on Deebo Samuel's rushing yards. It was I don't know what it was.
He was in the conversation for MVP early if San Francisco would have won that.
3 carries, 53 yards. I don't remember what his total was. I want to say it was in under 20.
It would probably be high teens, yeah.
Yeah, but I think he smashed it on the first one, so that was kind of my regret there. But overall, I think we did pretty well on the Super Bowl, so hopefully if you tail some of our bets, you should be eating some salmon as well. So hopefully you did some of that.
This was by the way, I was impressed with myself here. I never wound up with a play on a side for this full game.
Okay.
So
congratulations.
Yeah, I can't remember ever doing that for any Super Bowl ever.
So maybe you could have some haddock. A little bit cheaper.
Sure. All right. So that's all of our Super Bowl stuff. Didn't think we'd be doing this today, but we're moving on to MLB.
We're doing
where the Red Sox, we heard rumblings of it. It was going to happen before spring training got underway. The poor little small market Red Sox,
shame,
just with no money in their pockets, have to ship away Mookie Betts because they can't pay him. They have to add on David Price. Oh, and pay half of his money because they have to tack him on there. Literally, David Price is owed $96 million over the next 3 years. The Red Sox are going to pay roughly half of that to the Dodgers. So long, Mookie Betts. So long, David Price. We are now, a year and a half from the Red Sox winning the World Series. They've increased ticket prices, fired their general manager, parted ways with their manager, traded their best pitcher, and traded their 5-tool prospect that came from their own system.
Yep.
Paid money to do so. Got back what I think are a couple of decent prospects in return. The Dodgers are loaded. We'll talk about the sportsbook impacts of all this later, but Bucks reaction to just the entire trade.
So I talked about this on the Sweat early this morning, and I'll just kind of reiterate the points that I made. This is for the Red Sox, this is an organizational disaster. Absolute disaster. Now, when this first started to come around, I was okay with it. I was okay with the idea of trading Mookie Betts because you have tried to sign him on a number of different occasions. He rejected all of them. So it looked like we were headed to free agency. So if he's not going to re-sign, then yes, get rid of him now. Get something in return, because if you don't trade him, you are getting nothing but a pick when he ends up going to another team when he goes to free agency. Since then, once I've really thought about this and kind of read more about this, this is a disaster for the Red Sox, because this is a team that basically all of these bad contracts that they've given out, now you're paying for it by trading Mookie Betts because you have decided that you cannot pay for him. They can afford him. They can afford him. Don't get it twisted. This is the Boston Red Sox. If they want to sign him, they can. They want to get to a certain threshold to be under the luxury tax, and this is where we are. This is a team that okayed a $217 million contract on David Price, that okayed a $145 million contract extension for Chris Sale, that okayed a $68 million deal for Nathan Eovaldi, who really hasn't pitched well except the playoffs 2 years ago. Otherwise, he's been an injury liability. Because of these bad decisions, you have now traded away arguably one of the top 5 players, positional players in baseball.
I don't think there's an argument on top 5. I think he's probably considered top 3.
He's probably
he's
he's
Trout,
there.
And then there's Betts and a handful of other guys that fill out that top 3, top 5.
Sure.
I think he's solidified as a top 5, I would say.
So in this deal, they did what they wanted to do. They got 2 players back that will be cheap, under team control for a number of years now. So Alex Verdugo and Gratterall. I don't even know how to say his first name. Both of these guys.
I don't know much about the pitcher. So, I know that Verdugo he's a nice looking prospect. He should take Mookie's place in the outfield to start the season.
Yep.
let's not try and bring this guy up slow now after this trade.
Yeah.
You just made this trade. Let's let this kid
he
try
should
and
be
be
starting.
good and replace Mookie out there.
He should be starting. Now, his bat hasn't come around as much. He's got a good arm. Defensively, he's good. He'll be good for that outfield that right now has Jackie Bradley Jr. and Andrew Benintendi. So you got a loaded defensive outfield. But, by the way, you had to begin with. Let's not forget about that. Gratterall is very young, 21 years old, throws 100 miles an hour. Could be a setup man, or he could be potentially a number 2 or number 3 starter, which is something that they need because
they should really hope that he becomes a starter.
Yes.
Given what?
Agreed.
Given all the circumstances.
Agreed.
Here. And really a number 2. If
right.
you say 2-3, like he should be a solid 2 if they want this to look good.
Scouts say the ceiling is 2.
So then he better hit his ceiling.
Hopefully he can hit a ceiling. Right. But basically what this comes down to is that the Red Sox did what they've always wanted to do. They're saving money. They're raising ticket prices. And they're going to put a product out there that people are still going to go and see and sing Sweet Caroline during the 8th inning. Everything is hunky-dory. But as an organization, disaster. Now, if you're not a Red Sox fan, you don't care about everything I just said for the past 5 minutes. If you're a gambler, you should care because we have sportsbook implications that have come down now from this trade. Now, on DraftKings Nation, which is with DraftKings, dknation.draftkings.com, they put out a ton of content every day here for all sports here, but they put up a table that shows the odds pre-Mookie Betts trade for the Dodgers and Red Sox and now post. The Dodgers are now the favorites. They've been the favorites. They were originally 5-1 favorites. Now it's 4-1. I don't see how you don't like them at 4-1 odds because their lineup is loaded, their rotation is loaded. And by the way, David Price in Dodger Stadium should do well. This is not
He
Fenway
almost
Park.
won that World Series MVP.
Right.
Fortunately, it went to Steve Pearce, which is my greatest gambling accomplishment of all time. But everybody knows my Steve Pearce story. Little do people know, I bet 2 people to win World Series MVP that year.
Right.
David Price was the other. So I was going to bank either way. But, yeah, David Price is in an even better situation.
Sure.
It's a big market, L.A., but it's not the market that's going to keep knocking on him like the Boston market did. It's still it's LA. It's going to be more laid back, but it has the money. It's like the perfect place for David Price. I think Price is going to be really good, and the Red Sox and Dodgers are paying him essentially evenly for the rest of his contract. The Red Sox are just going to keep paying for Price to maybe be a really good pitcher.
Right. And in that rotation, he's probably going to be the 3rd starter.
So little pressure, especially with Kershaw and the playoff struggles.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll give my gambling takes in a second. I'll really quickly just give my thoughts on the trade.
Okay.
I think there's a few ways to look at this on how it looks for the Red Sox. You're right. Like where the Red Sox are now, they kind of had to trade Mookie Betts. It felt like, and get back a decent return. It feels like they got back a decent return. But at the same time, they put them. Number one, if they wanted to add him on to all the contracts they have and just pay him, they could. The Dodgers are going to. Look at everybody the Dodgers have. They're going to pay all of them. We'll see when does Bellinger need to get paid? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
He's somebody that's going to have to get paid soon. It'll be interesting to see if they pay him on top of Mookie, and just suck it up because they can. They're in that market. The Red Sox are able to do that, like you said. Given the contracts they gave out, maybe they have to trade Mookie Betts. But I think this stems all the way back to John Lester. They made the mistake with Lester, didn't pay him, got rid of him. They tried to make up. They realized they made their mistake, tried to make up for it by overpaying David Price.
Yep.
Now they're paying to get. Now they're using, Mookie Betts to get rid of David Price almost in ways. Shed that contract. They pay Sale a year before they have to pay Sale. And give him all that money. And now this is another homegrown guy like Lester was homegrown. Mookie's homegrown. Now it gets a chance to pay your own guy. And you can't because of all these other things that you've done. Now, it's soft on the Red Sox. This is something the Orioles do. This is something the Rays do. Not something the Red Sox do. The Red Sox are the Yankees and the Dodgers. And now they're saying that they're not. But I do have kind of a sports market angle on this, I guess. Baseball, the NBA is making itself better. The NFL is making itself better. The NHL is even making itself better. baseball keeps refusing to do so and stick to this 1920s game that they just think is America's pastime. They have to change at some point. Yet baseball contracts keep going in this direction. The Trout deals, the Harper deals, the Nolan Arenado deals, what will soon be the Mookie Betts deal. Is it a smart move to say, let's not pay a guy this, because who knows when the baseball market's going to tank if baseball doesn't change? And then all these guys become bad deals, and you can get a guy like Mookie Betts for 75% of the price what he's going to be. Just like the NBA salary cap went up one year, they signed all those terrible deals like Alan Crabb, Evan Turner were making like $80 million over 4 years, and then the cap bounced back, and all those guys are the worst contracts in the NBA. There's no salary cap in baseball, but like, is there any looking into the future and being like, well, if baseball doesn't change, this sport might kind of turn down here and the money might not be there, so maybe it's not a smart idea to pay Mookie Betts. That was just my one thought on the overall dollars of what it's going to take to keep him.
Yeah, and I do agree with that, because baseball has backed themselves into a corner. You get these contracts like Bryce Harper. Well, now when someone like Mookie Betts come around, he wants to get paid market value, and why not? Why not? You don't go to a job interview and go, hey, I know this job pays $50,000, but I'm okay with $35,000. You don't do that.
And the Mookie Betts is going to be a much bigger, a better player at a younger age than when Harper
27
hit the market.
Betts is 27. So I do agree with your angle. I think it's a great point here. But, going back to this gambling odds now here.
Stuff, yes.
The Dodgers win total went from 97.5 to 100.5. I mean, I get it, but that's a tough number to take the over.
It's just a stay away from me, because the Dodgers are so good in the regular season. They won 107 last year, and now they're adding a top of the rotation guy and a bat that's just going to – the Bellinger Betts spot in that lineup is going to just be killer.
And then, as you'd imagine, the Red Sox odds have dropped dramatically. They were plus 2,200 to win the World Series. That has dropped all the way down to plus 3,300 to win the American League overall. Good luck with that. 525 originally, plus 800 now. Win total, as you imagine, has also gone down from 88.5 to 85.5. That's a low total for the Boston Red Sox here. I get the value you can get on the Red Sox here at plus 3,300. I am not touching any of that. Any of that. There's nothing. Because, look, you can say that team underperformed last season. I think that's fair. Basically, that team is coming back minus Betts, minus Price. Big pieces, but there's still a lot of talent on that team. So at plus 3,300, I don't think it's wrong to say that there's value there for some of the talent on that team, but I want nothing to do with it at all. I don't want to touch that. This is a team that, come trade deadline, could they not get rid of more pieces potentially? I don't think that's out of the question.
No. I mean, my reactions here are from a gambling standpoint. The Red Sox win total, we talked about it. We loved the under at like 89, 88.5. It's down to 85.5. I would still play the under. Obviously, it's more insightful to see this coming and bet it before. But I would still take the under on that 85.5 for the Red Sox. As for, like, you can look at the division. Are the Rays going to win it at plus 450? Probably not. They're a good story, but they don't have the pieces, I don't think, to get that many games. So the Yankees at minus 360 to win the division are not a bet, but a parlay piece. If you're going to parlay some MLB futures, Yankees to win the division at minus 360 is a piece that I feel you can really safely include. So the other thing is league winner. The Yankees were plus 165 before. They're still plus 165 to win the AL.
Yep.
You get a team that, is pretty consistently in the mix in the Red Sox, most likely out of it. I think the Yankees become a better bet at plus 165. But here's the one that I couldn't believe earlier. The Dodgers are still plus 190 to win.
Good value. NL. Good value.
They've been doing it every year.
Right.
Now they have these pieces. It just I know it's a heavy favorite. The next is the Next in line is the Braves at plus 500.
I don't even know if they're gonna.
I don't know.
I'm
I mean,
not
obviously the
confident in them.
Nationals this year, but before that, the Dodgers made back-to-back World Series appearances. I think the Dodgers have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because of this Astros and Red Sox cheating scandal news, which they're very angry about. I bet they feel very pleased taking Mookie Betts and David Price from the Red Sox in this situation, even though I think they have a little bit more of a gripe with the Astros. This team feels like they're owed a World Series, and they're loading up to get it. It feels to me like this is the type of season where it could be a very baseball is not this type of sport. Like the NBA is this type of sport where you get two top-heavy teams and you know they're going to meet. This feels like a year the Yankees and Dodgers meet in the World Series. The Yankees had those injury issues last year. They're almost due to stay healthy. This feels like a heavyweight year in baseball, kind of. No,
and I agree. And when you look at the National League, so you mentioned the Braves are next in line at plus 500, the Nationals plus 700. I don't really like either. Like, for me, it's the Dodgers or the Reds at plus 1,800. A team that has very, very quietly loaded up their offense and their pitching. That's a team you have to look at. They have a rotation. They've added to their to the lineup at low. Nick Castellanos is also on the team now, which is not a move that we've talked about too much. But for me, it's the Dodgers and then the rest of the field. Like, I don't really feel confident enough that a team's going to be able to beat them to win the National League. So for me, it's not even close.
I agree. The Reds plus 1,800 are value. Brewers plus 1,500 maybe.
I worry about their pitching. I worry about their
pitching.
Yep, the pitching is not good at all. And their bullpen's going to have some issues too as well. But the Reds, man, a plus 1,800, that's the only other team I'm really looking at. As it stands right now, obviously things can change. February 5th, we're just on the heels of a huge trade that really kind of shifted the odds in the National League. But, yeah, Yankees and Dodgers, that's kind of where I'm at. They're the heavy favorites. Boring, but
I think it would be a fun World Series. I'm
sure
rooting for it.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I mean, the fanboy out of the equation. How would you not like that World Series matchup there? I think that's definitely the way to go.
Are you even a Red Sox fan this season?
It's tough.
I'm a very casual Red Sox fan. Like, I grew up more very Celtics oriented and Patriots oriented, and then that 2003, 2004, it was a lot easier to get into it, and then it's just tailed off so much because that's just been baseball. But
I mean, I grew up with it. I've gone to, honestly, a ton of games and everything, but this organization is such a mess right now. They're very hard to like.
It's hard to get behind.
Yeah.
I went to one Red Sox game last year on a Friday night in the DraftKings suite. There were free drinks and free food.
Here we go.
That's probably what it'll take to get me to a Red Sox game this year.
You know what?
The DraftKings suite with free drinks and free food.
I'm going to talk to our producers about this. I want to get a Julian brag counter up on the screen.
I wasn't bragging.
A humble brag, weird flex, at least once or twice a show. You named our third chair after you?
Well, I bought it. I sponsor it.
Oh.
We don't have a guest today. We might next week.
I'm gonna have to get the deal, the contract, and hop that out. Okay, quickly, let's get into NBA. We did talk about there was a couple trades that went down. One big trade there. The four-player team there. The biggest pieces there. Clint Capella going to the Hawks, under contract until the 2022-2023 season. Fantasy-wise, going to be a big boost for him playing with Trae Young, and defensively, that should be a big move for them as well. And then Robert Covington going to the Rockets. Makes them a strong defensive team, I would imagine there. Fantasy implications, your reactions. You're the NBA guy. I did my piece.
Thanks for that nice setup,
You're
Bucks.
very welcome.
All right, so my initial reaction, at first I was a little surprised that the Rockets wanted to deal Capella. They've said in the past that he's like the perfect center for their system. They give him the long-term contract, which is a good deal. He makes like $15 million this year. And then he gets hurt, and they start deciding, you know what? They've always played four wings with Capella. And they go, you know what? Let's go even smaller. Let's go the four wings with 6'7" PJ Tucker at center because he can shoot the corner three, and he's a scrappy little rebounder. So now I feel like the Rockets are setting the precedent, like raising the bar, I guess, of going even smaller in small ball. Everybody's going to be 6'7" and under almost in that lineup. So we'll see how it works. I think Covington is a equally as good piece to Capella. They make similar dollars. They're under team control for a while. And what Houston likes here is that they're going to play Covington at the 4, have him be able to switch. They switch everything anyway, and now it keeps a guy like Capella from getting out on wings like Kawhi, Paul George, LeBron.
Yep.
And you have Covington out there who is more suitable, and you have another three-point shooter, 3-and-D guy on the floor. Realistically, I don't think it affects any futures odds much. I don't think it gives them a better chance of beating the Lakers or the Clippers. They were going to lose to that team anyway. They're going to lose to that team now in a 7-game series. But I understand what the Rockets are doing, trying to make their matchups better. What?
Okay, I was going to say, so fantasy impact. Obviously, we said Capella's in a good spot here with Young. Does this hurt someone like John Collins now moving forward?
Well, so quickly first, sticking with Houston, I think that it's good for Covington going to Houston. Even though Minnesota's a mess and runs up and down the floor, this is a little bit more of a organized run-and-gun offense where he can get up some threes, get more bang for your buck, I guess, with the minutes that he plays. And then P.J. Tucker, who's always kind of been a value play because somebody's always out for the Rockets, becomes more stable. He's going to be pretty much the starting center for the rest of the year, whereas Capella was there before, but the minutes were already there for Tucker. On the Atlanta side, this isn't their year anyway. They're trying something new. I don't think it's a knock on John Collins. John Collins has been playing really well. Atlanta likes John Collins a lot. I think they're going to play the two together, which is going the complete opposite of Houston. They're going to play two bigs, going back to the old NBA. They're obviously different guys. They're more athletic guys. They're not like guys that you just glue in the paint and can't do anything, although Capella can't shoot, but he's very athletic. It's got to hurt Collins' fantasy impact, though, because it's going to take away rebounds with a great rebounder coming in. It's going to take away putback chances, alley-oop chances. Capella's the better alley-oop guy to go to, and that's how both of those guys get a lot of points. And Trae Young should be able to get Capella the ball in the ways that Harden and Westbrook get him the ball. So I think Capella's fantasy impact should be pretty similar. Atlanta gets a lot of possessions per game like Houston does, so I don't think it'll be much of an impact on Capella. I think it'll lower Collins a little bit. Trae Young's not going to be affected by anything. The whole goal of that offense and the reason they can play the two bigs is because they're going to just pick and roll Trae Young and try and do anything they can to get him space to shoot within 35 feet. So, it doesn't change that much for Atlanta other than, more Trae Young and more finishers and rebounders in the paint. Atlanta's one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA, so Capella fits a need there. It's a weird trade. There's not that much fantasy impact. There's just a lot of moving parts. I think the biggest fantasy winner from the trade is going to be Malik Beasley, who goes to the Timberwolves. He was buried behind a lot of guards in Denver, and he's like a 3,500, 4,000 guy on DraftKings. Now Jeff Teague goes to the Hawks earlier in that Minnesota deal, and then Shabazz Napier gets shipped out of Minnesota. So Malik Beasley has a chance to get 30 minutes a game as in the backcourt for Minnesota. I think that's going to benefit him a lot from where he's been in Denver.
So to wrap up the show, there is some NBA action tonight. Pretty big slate for Wednesday night. Anything you're kind of targeting here? As we've been talking, Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart have been ruled out for tonight. So we introduced this segment last week. It didn't get included in the show, but I have this new segment called Buck in the Dark, where I randomly pick a line that I'm gonna, I want to play tonight. So because of this news, I'm gonna be on Magic +8.
Okay,
that's my play. And by the way, I don't play NBA. I don't follow NBA. This is just Buck in the Dark. So
here's the thing I'll say: Orlando gets all their covers against teams under 500. Teams over 500. They're 4-12-1 against the spread in their last 17, whatever that adds up to.
But what about teams without Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart?
I mean, the Celtics beat Philly without Kemba. They beat Atlanta without the two of them in the last game. Now they're home. I think the Celtics win this game. 8's a fair number. I don't think there's an edge on that spread, I would say. But
prepared to go 2-0.
Okay. So, looking at the rest of the NBA, I don't think it's a great betting night in the NBA per se, but
Cop-out.
from the DFS angle is mostly what I want to talk about.
Fine.
Because we have the trade to take advantage of. These are the best slates to take advantage of. So from that deal, the Hawks and Timberwolves actually play each other. The Nuggets play in Utah. The Nuggets are already so shorthanded. Now they're going to have none of these bodies from the trade. So I just think that they're going to have a lot of really strong value, and you can still pay up for Jokic. The Minnesota side, you lose Covington. I think that gives a lot of value on the perimeter for Minnesota. A guy like Jarrett Culver is a value. I think that this allows you to just pay up for as many studs as you want on this slate and then fill in your value by all these shorthanded teams because of the trade. And salaries haven't been adjusted to that. So because salaries come out, late afternoon on Tuesday, and this trade happened in the middle of the night. So I think there's a lot of good value, on those trade-involved teams because of those players that are missing that are not factored in. And it's different than injuries. Like injuries, you have to wait. Injuries, it's generally just one guy, whereas this was, a 12? How many players were in this deal?
12.
So, there's a ton of bodies missing from these teams that you can take advantage of. I will look to the player prop side. So let's see. You go to Boston. So this is one that I gave out earlier with Daniel Tice out. Enes Kanter should play 20 or so minutes. His point prop's 12.5. I like the over there. The last 4 games that he's played, 20-plus minutes.
Yep.
He's scored at least 13 points. He averages 17 in those. So I think no Tice is a good spot for Enes Kanter. That's still there as we're doing this on DK Sportsbook. And then, with Smart and Kemba out, Gordon Hayward's at 15.5. Jason Tatum is at 22.5. Jaylen Brown, 20.5. That's pretty low for Hayward, but this is almost a volume spot where you can just fire and try and hit 2 of the 3.
Right.
But yeah, the player props in general with injury news are my favorite way to bet the NBA. So it's not a play you give out in the morning. It's a play that you say, hey, watch everybody that's questionable, or even better, watch the players that come out of nowhere to get ruled out and then act on the player props as quickly as you can.
And if you want the updated player props, you can go visit @Julian Edlow on Twitter. He does these plays all the time. That's all he does.
All the time. That's how I make the money to sponsor the @Julian Edlow hot seat.
The odds and lines are subject to change. See website for actual odds. If you or someone you know have a gambling problem and want help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. You good?
I'm good.
All right, here's going to be my outro. Thank you so much for watching the Panel B podcast or listening. If you're on your audio devices, you can do that anytime, anywhere, any place. So make sure to do that. And of course, we'll be back next Wednesday. We're going to talk about everything that's happened throughout the week. So make sure you're watching because I'm doing a lot of pointing right now, which Julian pointed out. No pun intended. See you next week.